Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
We are doctors
and weight management and metabolic health experts.
and this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast.
Hello, lovely friend. How are you this morning on what is probably or possibly a beautiful Tuesday, no matter where you are in the world? This morning I do not have the gorgeous Dr. Mary, but I have another equally fabulous guest, a beautiful woman who I've known for quite a while. She's been in our community for quite some time, and she has a spectacular story to share that I think will be helpful for many of you. Her name is Lis van Kooten. Lis, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Dr. Lucy. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, you are welcome. I'm really happy to have you because I think your story is really, really important. And for a lot of people listening, you know, people will know that at Real Life Medicine, our philosophy and our ethos is to really be kind and non-judgmental and recognise, to use an Australian colloquialism, there is more than one way to skin a cat. And there is certainly more than one way to manage long-term weight issues, and that for most people, there is not a simple, one bullet solution, that many people need to use all the tools available. And so I thought your story sort of exemplifies that perfectly. So I would love for you to perhaps share some of your journey with our beautiful friends listening.
Sure. So, my journey started a long time ago when I was about 11 and I started to develop symptoms of lipedema. So I got big legs and was constantly told by the family that you've just got the family, big legs, you're just going to be big because it's in the family. But, if you just exercised a bit more and perhaps didn't eat so much, you could look better. That kind of the same narrative that we've all been told for millions of years. So, I get older, I have kids, the lipedema gets worse, the weight piles on and keeps piling on and piling on. And just constantly being told, well, it's actually because you eat too much and you're not moving enough. You get to a point where you think, look, I've tried everything. I've tried absolutely everything. I have exercised until I've fallen over. I've starved myself until I've fallen over. Nothing's working. So then I found Real Life Medicine, probably 2021, and really adopted the low-carb way of eating, and found that when I was really strict with myself, that the pain of the lipedema went away and I felt great, I had lots of energy, the weight was dropping off and it was, hooray, hooray. And then life starts to happen again and Fluffy keeps waking up. All 3 heads. He's probably grown a few more heads in this time. He's maybe got 5 now. And I've started to find it harder and harder and harder to put him back to sleep.
Yep. Okie dokie. So for people listening, I wondered if you could explain to them what lipedema is in case people aren't aware of the condition. So as you said, you've had it since puberty by the sounds of things. So if you could perhaps just tell our friends, what is lipedema and how did it affect you?
Sure. Well, lipedema is diseased fat. It's complicated, but the crux of it is I've got lots of fat pockets in my legs that exercise and diet don't necessarily shift.
No.
So when I was growing up, around sort of teenage years, 15, 16, I had a really small top half. I don't know if we're talking sizes, maybe 10. And then my bottom half was always a 16, 18, really big legs, heavy, and nothing I did ever. So fast forward a million years, I got diagnosed when I was 51. So all this time I didn't know. So, look, it was great to find out. But, yeah, it took a long time. So lots of mess in the head.
Oh, absolutely. And you can imagine as a young teenage girl where, beauty standards are that you have to be a waif. And, I know for a lot of women with lipedema, the term tree trunk legs, thunder thighs, they're very common slurs that have been used against them and often internalized themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's really common, like around, 11% of all women experience lipedema. And it's not just that your legs are too fat, like it's a complex connective tissue disorder, where the tissue between the fat cells becomes inflamed and it leaks this sort of gelatinous material. And so women end up with swollen, I guess, legs that are filled with sort of a fluid, but then that fluid can scar and they end up with little lumps and bumps and painful nodules throughout it as well. So not just, well, they're storing too much fat there. It's kind of complex, which is why, as you said, it doesn't respond to standard calorie restriction, because if you do that, yes, the rest of you will end up emaciated and the legs can still be larger. But there is options available for people as well, which again, probably outside the scope of what we're talking about today. But, just so that people know, there is definitely things that people do to manage, because it's not just about the size of legs, is it? It's pain and heaviness as well.
The size is actually the least important in my world. And I'm sure that for some women, it's really important to have thinner legs. But that's actually the least of my worries. It's the lack of, my mobility was starting to really take a beating. And the pain, waking up in the middle of the night with pain in my thighs and my hips and my knees. And I think that was probably the worst. And I could feel it getting worse, even though I was swimming every day using a compression pump and seeing a lipoedema and lymphedema physio, because then I started to get lymphedema as well in one of my legs. So, yeah, the size actually is not, it's kind of, and by the way, that's kind of more like a diagnostic tool, an initial diagnostic tool that, hang on a minute, that doesn't look quite right. Let's explore that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second question was around fluffy. So I thought we might explain again to people who perhaps haven't followed real life medicine for very long, or perhaps new to us. What are we talking about when we talk about fluffy waking up?
Well, Fluffy's the character from Harry Potter, and the real life medicine story around Fluffy is when you keep your carbs low and your insulin response is moderated and nice and calm, you don't crave the carbs, and you don't, because Fluffy's asleep. Fluffy is the insulin monster, I think, the carb monster.
Yeah.
So when you're good, when you're doing the helpful things that make you feel better, like keeping your carbs low and prioritizing protein, then Fluffy stays asleep. But as soon as you start to, you might have Christmas time. What do you have at Christmas? Some carby thing, roast potatoes, or one head wakes up. And then before you know it, all three of his horrible heads have woken up, and now you're eating all the carbs that have ever been produced.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So it is. It's an analogy to understand how cravings can work, and in particular sugar and processed carb cravings. And this is why when we start with a little bit, people can manage it, which is why, again, we always say you don't have to be perfect. But when we eat a lot and eat them frequently, then to suddenly stop can feel really hard. And that's because we've got this carb craving. We call it Fluffy, who's a three-headed dog. So there's suddenly the three heads all desperately wanting carbohydrates of some sort. And again, you can use that same analogy for any potentially addictive substance, whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or gambling or anything like that. So it's really just about trying to keep him either asleep or just with one head that is manageable, that you can go, yeah, okay, fine, yeah, I'd like that, but I can manage not having it, rather than feeling completely out of control and that you've got no hope.
Absolutely.
Okie dokie. So you were finding you had trouble then managing the cravings and managing your food. Is that what that's I think that's where we're at to now.
Yeah. All three heads were awake, with a few puppies waking up as well. And I'm 55, and I've got to the point where I thought, you know what, I am so tired of constantly battling Fluffy and constantly feeling like I'm the one who's at fault for waking him up all the time. And, then I'll just berate myself because, well, you can't even get this right. That kind of narrative that just wasn't helpful, even though I know that low carb and, prioritizing protein is absolutely the best way. It gets rid of my pain. It makes me feel great. But there was just something there that I couldn't keep him down for whatever reason that was.
Yeah, little step.
Yeah. So I decided that I would go down the bariatric surgery journey, and I had a gastric sleeve in October of 24, and it's brought up a whole new fluffy.
Interesting.
However, I don't regret having the surgery, and I think it's, it's only early days, but it's bringing up a whole lot of things that I think, we all kind of know. The reason why we're part of real life medicine, or why we're going down certain ways of eating, that it's all in your head. It's all the head talk. It's the mindset. It's not the food.
Yeah, I know. All the recipes. Yeah.
So that's it's just highlighted that a lot.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing that is really important for people listening out there is there is no one thing that works for every person, and every person probably needs more than one thing. So this is where I really, really, really want to bang this point home, is that there is no judgment, criticism, or shame for people that require bariatric surgery in order to manage their metabolic health conditions, or people that use or need injectable weight loss medications. I know that there's this sort of secret people often don't want to say, like they feel, and I know what they don't want to say. They feel like people are going to judge them. But honestly, it's another tool, isn't it? And it's not about taking the easy way out.
Oh, no, far from it. Far from it. I find it a lot easier now to eat low carb. So I'm actually doing the low carb anyway, but I find it's almost effortless now.
Yeah, easy, right, excellent. So again, looking at it as it's a tool to help you implement the things that you wanted to implement in the first place.
Yeah, and look, I've had a lifetime of being judged for being fat, judged for doing the injectables, judged for exercising too hard, judged for exercising not enough. So it's just everything is a judgment. So I don't actually feel judged now at all. Good.
Okie dokie. So had the surgery. Your surgery went well?
It was, completely without any hiccups, which was great.
Wonderful. So then what happened? Like for people that haven't had bariatric surgery, or even ones that are, considering it, what was the next step? What happened after you got out of hospital?
The first few weeks are very restrictive. So there's a week of just fluids, then a week of still really fluids, just thicker fluids.
Yep.
Then there's some time on mushy food, and then you slowly get introduced back to normal eating, or normal food. The thing is, they say that your hunger goes away. My hunger never left, so I still get really hungry. The problem now, but what happens now is I will dish up a meal, then I can only eat a quarter of it. So it's a restriction thing for me at the moment, but it's making me think about the fact that I need to prioritize protein because I can only eat such a small amount. So I need to make sure that what I eat is nutritious and will fuel my body rather than fuel the emotions in my head. Yeah, so I need to be really mindful that whatever I eat is good for me.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, actually, because you're right. It's, I guess, volume-wise, the stomach is now very small, so you literally can't fit much in. So if you then fill that volume with a potato, well, then you can't fit in anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That is interesting. And I guess this is the thing we do see for people with bariatric surgery is making sure that they don't end up malnourished, that they actually have all of their nutrition managed.
Yeah, so I do take supplements. I take a bariatric specific multivitamin and also a calcium and vitamin D, just to buffer any deficiencies that might be there.
Yeah, it's not just a a quick thing is that there's some complexity around it, and making sure that you manage any of those complexities. It's almost the same with the injectable weight loss medications, which offer a similar outcome in that, people find it very hard to eat big normal amounts of food following using of those. And I think there's probably a whole host of people out there who aren't given any nutritional advice, particularly if they're getting their weight loss medications through, a pop-up telehealth clinic that takes a form and a 30-second consult and off you go.
It's so wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. One of my bugbears. All right, so back to you. So you're still hungry, but you actually can't eat very much, but you're prioritizing protein and you've got some multivitamins going on. Okie dokie. And what about the emotional side of things?
So that's what's hit me like a bit like a sledgehammer. It hasn't been very subtle. So I had the surgery in the start of October. That whole month was in the past, before the surgery, I would have eaten the entire month away. And it wouldn't have been healthy food because my husband had his skin cancer removed. Then he had half his thyroid out. Then I had my surgery. There was 2 deaths in the family. My dad was in hospital. He's not well. And everything was just piled into 1 month. And so I thought, but I went to go back to my old way of coping with things, which was to eat. And I couldn't. I physically couldn't.
Do you know what's interesting though is, and before we came on air, we were having a chat about that, was that you had thought that you were managing your emotions, that you didn't rely on food.
Yeah, I thought that I had that down pat. All the, the coaching with yourself and Dr. Mary and the, I'm onto this, and I do work on myself in other ways as well. And but that's it for me. And I went into it thinking it is just portion sizes because I eat well. I don't emotionally eat. It's just portions. I just don't know when to stop. Yeah, well, turns out that was not the case.
How interesting is our brain, isn't it? Where it makes up a little story that feels like the truth until you're confronted with hard evidence that you have to actually go, I might need to re-examine my truth.
Yeah, because we can, I would make excuses, all sorts of excuses under the sun as to why I can't really eat this way all the time. Or, I have a bigger body, so therefore I need to eat more food, or all sorts of reasons in my head as to why nothing ever worked. And then when you get to, my husband was in hospital. I couldn't even drive yet. Like, it was a week after I had my surgery. We didn't know if his thyroid whether it was malignant, or we didn't know what was going on. And I had to actually deal with it.
Yes. You had to actually sit with those uncomfortable emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And how did that go?
Oh, he's all good, and it was not sinister. Yeah, so that was October. So slowly I'm starting to get my head around just sitting with emotions and sitting in them for a bit, and then I'm doing so much journaling. It's everything I feel, I'll write it down. And every time I go, I just need, all the chocolates are out. Everyone buys boxes of favourites for everybody. So every time I want to, why do I want to eat this? And I'm writing everything frantically, and it's getting that out has been really helpful too.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting, isn't it? So until you're forced to use the tools, because you now, your previous coping tool of using food, which even though you thought wasn't really there, that option is taken away by physically removing half your stomach, you then are actually forced to confront your emotions and use the psychological strategies that you've been taught over the years and actually implement them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I thought that I had.
Yeah. So now you're saying that maybe you hadn't.
I'm saying that definitely I hadn't, because it was easy to just go, look, for whatever reason, I know that it's probably not great for me to have chocolate, but it's okay. It's okay because I'm consciously doing it. I'm doing it with love, and I'm doing it consciously, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It's actually not.
Yeah. Interesting. I think one of the things I think then that is going to be super good for you is that you are setting yourself up for the future, because one of the things that we see at Real Life Medicine is quite a lot of our people have already had bariatric surgery. So unlike you, who sort of came, hadn't had it, started the tools, for whatever reason, couldn't quite implement all the tools, had the surgery, and now going, oh, right, God, now I do need to use the tools. There are people who had surgery, a few years ago and, lost their weight initially and then they've regained. And they're now realizing, God, I've got to do something else as well. And so what you're going to find is, because you're learning the tools, implementing and practicing them, which is really the key, because, it's like anything, isn't it? You learn the piano, but if you don't practice it, you forget. You learn a new language. If you don't practice it, you forget it. And what that will do is set you up for minimal regain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I see it too.
Yeah. And I think it's worth knowing that most people lose a significant amount of weight with bariatric surgery. And of those, most people will experience about 30% regain, which is, which can feel a bit, that must feel that would feel hard for people. And so then they will either do something like you're doing, like see us or see a psychologist or something to manage the reason they're there. And it's often food or alcohol. Again, you still drink with a bariatric surgery. You can still have wine, still fit that in, still fit in Coke or not. Coca-Cola, any of those things. And so then people following surgery will have either end up going on to injectable weight loss medications or have a second procedure. So there's a whole heap of things that are going on. And I think that what I love is that you've recognized that this is not the silver bullet, but it's an extremely effective tool to allow you then to implement the psychological strategies.
Yeah. And, I've been down the injectable path and it worked really, really well until they weren't available. And then, it was just this constant up and down. I put all the weight back on, then they became available, so I tried again, weren't effective. It just becomes this expensive, a great tool if you can get your hands on the stuff. But I do kind of think that it's a forever thing.
I think for lots of people it will be. I think there's probably, again, like lots, it's not a one-trick pony and it's not a one-size-fits-all. And this is, again, just so why I'm so anti-text-based telehealth subscription services that don't actually talk to the person or get to the root cause of what's going on for them. And recognizing that it's about doing all the things. And, and a gastric sleeve is not going to make you go to the gym or lift heavy weights, but we do know that there's some things that, once people are recovered, they need to do.
Yeah, and I've joined an 8-week challenge at the gym. It starts in Feb. I swim most days anyway, but I'm going to do the challenge not for, they start off with, so how much weight do you want to lose? And no, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it just to get back in the habit of going to the gym and lifting things, and doing some functional stuff. So I'm starting that in Feb. But in the meantime, I'll keep swimming and I'll keep doing my compression and, I'm only 3 months in. But I'm finding it easier. I would float. So I need ankle weights to keep me submerged because, there's a certain amount of adipose tissue on me that keeps me floating really, really well. But it's actually hard to swim.
Yeah. You're like one of those birds that donks its head into the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'm finding even that is starting to become easier. So things are shifting. I'm not on the scales every 5 minutes. I had to actually buy some scales because I didn't even want to do that. But I also recognise that it's probably not a bad thing to just, do it in moderation. I'm just finding life starting to become a bit easier. And that, for me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. There's lots of pieces to manage the metabolic health picture, to manage people's weight around that. There's lots of things that people need to do. It's not just one thing. but sometimes that one thing might help you be able to implement all the other things. And I think that's really the best way to look at things. And so if that's what does it, then for God's sake, go and do that one thing and then make a plan to implement all the others.
That's it. And that's why I will stay in the real life medicine community, because that's where all the important stuff happens.
Yeah, well, I think the mind, as we know, I call it's your frenemy. It can be your most powerful ally, or it can be just a little, saboteur. And it's about really working that out and then working out the best way to manage it. I would love to say it's really easy, but it's not, because it's about finding that balance between all or nothing, being perfect, versus the letting yourself off the hook because you don't want to be perfect, because that's not good either. And we find if we're letting ourselves off the hook too often, then we're not actually doing it. But if we're aiming for perfection, then we can end up being really rigid and inflexible, and that then it's not a way to live either. So it's a finding your path, and that can be tricky.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable on this path. Sometimes people find it's a bit of a competition to, I've done this naturally, but, surgery is not natural. So therefore it's that kind of, and I just, that's the judgment part. But mind you, I used to think like that too.
I think we've been conditioned to do it. But, there's no moral victory on getting to wherever it is you want to go. Like, there's no prizes. I don't know who out there is judging, but, God or whoever, he's not out there going, oh, well, you can come to heaven because you lost your weight all by yourself. You'll have to go to hell because you had surgery.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, there's none of that. I think it's really just about, whatever it takes. What I want is for people to be able to make decisions with all the information available to them, and know whatever it is that they're embarking on, what the pros and cons are. And that goes for whether it's bariatric surgery, whether it's injectable weight loss meds. I was talking to a patient the other day who had to have a different gastric procedure, and the surgeon had offered her a bypass operation, which is a huge operation, even probably bigger than a sleeve as far as long-term potential side effects and complications and whatnot. And she didn't want to do that yet. And she'd said that. And then just as she's being wheeled in, he kind of said to her, not too late to change your mind. And I just thought, that's so unfair. She's vulnerable. She's lying, essentially on the gurney, ready to go in. And he's giving her the scarcity now or never line. And I just thought, that's not fair. I think that, had she decided to go down that path, then she needed to do that, in the full context of all the implications, not a last-minute decision, because, surgery, you can't undo it.
No, you need to mentally prepare yourself, not just mentally, physically prepare yourself. I'm a natural therapist, and some might think of me as a quack, and that's okay. But I did all my quackery before I went into surgery. And I think that if I had, I don't know how I would have recovered if I hadn't, but I was in hospital 2 nights. I had no complications, everything. I had no pain, didn't take any of the pain meds or the nausea meds, none of it. But to spring that on someone who's prepared for a different procedure,
yeah,
that's unethical.
Yeah, it wasn't my favourite thing. I think, again, it's just about people, having autonomy, making, as you know, we love this line, you're the boss of you. So it's about making a decision that you're happy with, being given all the information so that you can make that decision, and then going with it.
I do have to say, though, that the knowledge that I gained working with you guys, if I didn't know about low carb or prioritizing protein, and I listened to what was told to me after the surgery, which was things like, if you can just eat half a piece of toast, and if that fills you up, isn't that great? Because that will make you lose weight. That will help you to get the weight off. If you can eat half a potato, and if that fills your stomach, that's great, because, there's hardly any calories in that, and so therefore you're going to lose a lot of weight.
Right, yes.
Yeah, and then I don't even think I said anything in reply to that, because I thought, how on earth is your body supposed to repair?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, weight loss of any sort, whether it's from bariatric surgery, from intermittent fasting, from the GLP-1s, can come with significant muscle mass loss. And we need to do everything in our power to counter that, because otherwise we end up with, skinny, non-functioning muscles that don't support our body into our old age, where, we then just become frail, fall over and die. In a nutshell. So there we go.
Let's not go there.
No. Lovely, Lis. This has been so helpful. I'm sure people will relate to your story. Again, this is where at Real Life Medicine, hopefully, lovely listeners, you all know there's no shame in needing any medical interventions. They are part of the puzzle, and it's not this or that, but this and that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just plug you also a little bit, because the support that I continue to feel is phenomenal. Even, I've had the surgery, I've done all the everythings, and it's like, well, okay, nothing's really changed. Nothing's changed. The support stays the same, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Which is probably why I'll never leave.
Oh, we love you. We love you. But, if you ever needed to leave, we would still be your friends, so don't worry. All right, lovely ones. Well, that's it for us this week. Have the most spectacular week, and we'll catch up with you again next week. Bye for now. The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.